we can do here. I mean, hopefully we can be a bit closer to the guys ahead. That's the target.
Listen, guys, something massive is happening in Miami right now, and if you're a Max Verstappen fan, this one is going to hit different. Red Bull just rolled into Florida with a completely transformed car. New wings, new side pods, basically a different beast. And Max is sitting in ninth place in the championship, desperate to claw his way back. Today, we're breaking down three big angles that explain exactly what's going on with Max in Miami. And trust me, by the end of this video, your whole perspective on Red Bull's 2026 season is going to change. Red Bull's massive Miami upgrade. Okay, so let's start with the car itself, because honestly, this is where the whole story begins. Red Bull came to Miami with one of the most significant upgrades of their 2026 season so far. We're talking new side pods, revised front wing dive planes, and here's the wild part. They've actually adopted Ferrari's famous Macarena wing. You know, that upside-down rear wing concept that Ferrari was testing earlier this season? Yeah, Red Bull looked at that and said, we want that too. Now, that tells you a lot, right? When a team like Red Bull starts borrowing concepts from a rival, it means they're genuinely struggling and they're willing to try anything to find performance. This isn't the Red Bull we know from 2022 and 2023, where they were just dominating everything effortlessly. This is a Red Bull that is hunting, experimenting, and pushing hard because they know they're behind, and that makes Miami incredibly important for them. Max is ninth in the championship. Now, let's talk about where Max actually stands right now, because the numbers are pretty brutal if we're being honest. Max Verstappen, the guy who won 4 consecutive world championships, is currently sitting ninth in the driver's standings with only 12 points. Meanwhile, 19-year-old Kimi Antonelli is leading the whole championship with 72 points, and George Russell is right behind him at 63. That gap between Max and the top is enormous, and it gets even more painful when you look at the Suzuka race, where Max finished a full 32 seconds behind race winner Antonelli. That's not a small gap, that's a completely different league of performance. So when Max said his target for Miami is simply to be nearer to the front, you can actually feel the frustration behind those words. He's not talking about winning yet, he's just trying to get back into the conversation. For someone as competitive as Max, that situation must be eating him alive, and Miami is basically his first real chance to respond. The new rules shake everything up. Here's the third angle, and this one is actually really interesting because it gives Max and Red Bull genuine hope going into this weekend. From Miami onwards, the FIA has introduced new energy management rule changes, and what that basically means is the way teams use their hybrid power is going to be different. There's a lower recharge limit in qualifying now, which minimizes the most extreme battery recharging techniques that some teams were using to their advantage. Now here's why this matters for Max. These kinds of regulatory tweaks have the potential to completely shuffle the order. Ferrari boss Fred Vasseur literally said before Miami that every small rule change will go in the direction of someone or against someone and can impact massively the results. So the competitive order that we saw in Australia, China, and Japan, it might not be the same order we see from Miami onwards. Red Bull has been optimizing behind the scenes for weeks, and these new rules could genuinely play into their hands. The sprint weekend pressure. Now here's something people are sleeping on a little bit, and it makes everything we just talked about even more intense. Miami is a sprint weekend, which means the schedule is incredibly tight. There's only one practice session, FP1, and it's been extended to 90 minutes this time around because of all the new rules and car upgrades coming in at once. After that, it goes straight into sprint qualifying, then sprint race, then Grand Prix qualifying, all in a very compressed window. What that means is that Red Bull basically has 90 minutes to understand their new car, dial in the setup, figure out the new energy rules, and get Max in a position to compete. There's almost zero margin for error. For a team that's already been struggling for pace this season, one bad call in FP1 could spiral into a really difficult weekend. The pressure on the Red Bull engineers right now is absolutely enormous. Max's mindset and team dynamics. Let's also talk about what's going on inside the garage, because the human side of the story is just as interesting as the technical stuff. Max Verstappen is someone who thrives when everything around him is working perfectly. We saw that in those dominant years. But right now, things are messy. The car isn't where it needs to be, the points gap is massive, and there are even reports circulating about his long-term future at Red Bull, with other top teams keeping an eye on the situation. Despite all of that noise, though, Max came to Miami with a clear head and a simple goal: just get closer to the front. No drama, no excuses, just focus. And honestly, that kind of mentality in a difficult moment is actually a sign of a great driver. The real test isn't when everything is going well, it's moments like these that define whether a driver truly belongs at the top. How Miami compares to 2024's turning point. Here's a fun little historical angle that gives this whole weekend even more weight. Remember Miami 2024? That was actually the race where McLaren introduced a game-changing upgrade that completely shifted their entire season trajectory. They went from being a mid-pack team to genuine championship contenders almost overnight. And now, in 2026, McLaren is once again bringing one of their biggest upgrades of the season to the exact same venue. History is a funny way of repeating itself in Formula One, and Miami has already proven that it can be a turning point race. The question now is, will 2026 Miami be a turning point for Red Bull and Max, the same way 2024 Miami was for McLaren? The timing, the upgrades, the pressure, it all lines up in a very similar way. What happens next? So let's bring this all together real quick. Today we looked at Red Bull's massive Macarena wing upgrade, Max's brutal position in ninth place, and the new energy rules that could genuinely shake up the competitive order from Miami onwards. We also talked about the sprint weekend pressure, Max's mindset, and how this race could be a historical turning point, just like 2024 was for McLaren. My personal opinion, I actually think Red Bull surprises people this weekend. The upgrades look serious, Max is hungry, and new rules always create chaos, and chaos is exactly what they need right now. But here's the question I want to leave you with. Do you think Max Verstappen can genuinely challenge for race wins again before the summer break, or is 2026 already too far gone for Red Bull? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you guys think.